Hello, hello. Can you hear us, beautiful audience and people in the chat? Yeah, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this Weekend Quality. It is a weekly event from Ministry of Testing where everybody can talk with other testers, share their insights, ask questions, and actually share what is going on this week in quality. My name is Oleksandr, and here with me, Claire Norman. Hi, Claire.
Hello, Alexander. Very excited to be here. My first time co-hosting. Happy Friday.
Yes, yes, it is really wonderful to have you here. And today is Friday 13th. And yeah, it will be not regular this week in quality episode. We will talk about superstitions in quality. But before we will jump to the main topic, one thing that I want to remind is that this event is official Ministry of Testing event. So please follow the code of conduct. You can check the code of conduct on ministryoftesting.com on the main page at the bottom. And yeah, you can also, if you are live, check the link in the chat. And what's actually happening in your week in quality, Claire?
So my week in quality has all been about collaboration. You're going to get sick of hearing me talk about collaboration because I think it's an area that we have neglected a little. So my favorite comment of the week from one of my team was we were in a session where we were getting designers and engineers to collaborate a little bit better. And one of the designers remarked that it's really great to have engineers involved a little bit earlier because they have ideas too. So that was my win for the week.
Yeah, it is very, very nice. And I think it's additionally very great to involve engineers early in the life cycle because we all reading about this practice in blog posts or in the books or even at some public talks. But from my experience, I rarely encounter this thing in real life. So when engineers are involved at the design stage, so it is really nice. And my biggest question here is how to make people to be involved in these sessions.
Interesting. Yeah, I could talk a lot about that. Well, for this week for my part, we just tried with a very small experiment. We didn't try and frame it as everybody needs to be involved earlier. We just said, we're interested in what you're designing. Can we come and see that, please? And that's what this led to. And that was marvelous.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's I think it's all boils down to the team and how team works
Mm.
and the culture inside the company. Yes, it is good to have anything new about and hear about collaboration and involvement of engineers. But what is happening in Ministry of Testing this week?
Well, let's see. I'm very jealous that Ministry of Testing Netherlands is happening on Thursday next week, 6 days away. And I'm particularly jealous of this one because I have family in the Netherlands. So it's a country that I've visited a lot. And I did go into Google Maps today and just, did a quick directions from my house to Veen in the Netherlands where they're hosting it and back again. It was only a 16-hour round trip by train. And I thought, you know what, I could probably manage that. But cost expanded exponentially. So
Mhm.
I don't think it's a possibility for me. But if you are joining MoT Netherlands next week, I wish you a collaborative and Dutchy evening. I'm sure that'll be marvelous.
Yes, it is always interesting to see and hear people not online but offline because like in the world in the post-COVID world the beauty is in meeting people offline.
Absolutely.
Uh, And another thing that I wanted to talk about what's happening in Ministry of Testing. One thing is you can check the collections of calls with Simon, where he talking to another, like, a lot of different testers around the world and discuss a lot of different questions. So I think it will be a link in the chat. Please check these short videos. It is really insightful to see how people think and how people work and how people discuss and talk about quality. So this is one big thing. And I suppose that this list of videos will be expanded in future. So do not just watch it once and forget. And the second thing that I want to also mention is that this week it was announced that the list of ambassadors for Ministry of Testing for this week, 2026, you can check the list of ambassadors. I think it's on ministryoftesting.com/ambassadors. So there are very nice people who drives quality and helps community grow. And yeah, that's wonderful that these ambassadors are there.
Yes, amazing people. Just they're MoT ambassadors, but really, if you just want a list of amazing people, go look there. I mean, and why stop there? Go and look at anyone else's profiles. If you're new here, if you've joined us here for the first time, tell us your name, share your profile. We want to see you.
Yes, and not only share your profile, you can also follow other people at Ministry of Testing
Mm,
site, and you can follow their contributions, and you can just see what people are talking about, and just meet a lot of interesting people in this community. So please check others' profiles. Yes, and that was like the main updates for this week. And I think the main topic for today is superstitions, and not only superstitions, but superstitions in quality in our work. So if you are here in chat with us right now, please share your insights on which superstitions do you have or your teams have. And if you want to talk, just also mention in chat and we will put you on stage. And let's start discussing this interesting topic. What about you, Claire? Which superstitions you can recall?
this is really exciting. I was so happy that this episode fell on a Friday the 13th because it's all about spidey senses and sensing something that's about to happen just before it happens. And I think, testers or people with that quality mindset are really gifted with this, right? Especially when it comes to something like exploratory testing, where we're sort of using our testing nose to
Mhm.
look at where might be a little bit dodgy, where might be a bit wobbly. So I'd really love to hear people's thoughts on if they've managed to find anything tangible within their spidey senses, I suppose. But I did have a little look at the history of Friday the 13th and why it's so notorious. And it's actually because two superstitions have collided. So for centuries, the number 13 was seen as unlucky, partly because the number 12 was considered a perfect number in ancient cultures. So 13 felt like it tipped things off balance a little. And Fridays had their own bad reputation, with medieval advice against starting journeys or projects on a Friday, or sailors refusing to set sail on that day. But it wasn't until the 19th and 20th centuries that those two ideas fused. And that was helped along by a best selling novel in 1907 called Friday the 13th. And from there, the legend has snowballed. And now we all give a little nod, whether we believe in superstitions or not. And as Richard Adams says in the chat, don't ship on a Friday still lives on. Don't start a journey. Don't ship on a Friday.
Yes. I think the history of this superstition, yeah, it's really old. And from what I discovered when I'm preparing to this call, is that like in many cultures, 13 is considered unlucky number, but not in all cultures. For example, in other countries, like in Italy, unlucky number not is 13, but it's 17.
Oh,
In Japan, for example, the unlucky number is 4. And they are even in some elevators, you can't find the number of 4, so it will be floor 3 and floor 5 because of this superstition. So people are generally very unique, and each culture is unique. So 13 is not only way how we can see superstitions. And you just mentioned that, and you started this like with an example that we one of the superstition can be do not release on Friday. Is
mm.
it do not release on Friday any Friday, or do not release on Friday the 13th?
I mean, for our team, it's any Friday, and that's what I'm getting the sense from the chat as well. Yeah, who mentioned, was it Gary Hawkes? Not on a Friday club. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and also in the chat, I think Helene mentioned that in China, 4 is also unlucky number. So it's not only in Japan. Thank you for this
Oh.
insight. And also, audience in the chat, if you have your stories about your superstitions, please mention and we'll put you on stage. And from my perspective, I can also share one little superstition that I encountered is that I think not only I'm that unique person that found this superstition, but a lot of people, a lot of other people also do, is that a lot of developers face this superstition that this works on my machine. And if it will be ported in some other machine, then it will not work. I I don't know about like whether it is superstition or not, but I saw a lot of examples and I saw a lot of beliefs in developers that they they are they know that their code will work because it works only on their machines.
Right.
And yeah, I think it is partially. I can't say like for 100%, but it might be a reason why, for example, Docker was invented, because Docker allows us to to build this reusable environment where if it works in Docker, then it will be ported to any machine. It will work the same way in any machine. So this superstition will be eliminated. But I
Love
don't know
that. Thank you,
whether
Docker,
it
for that.
is. Yes.
Right. Well, I also saw that, well, also sort of feel that, where do these superstitions come from, right? So, as humans, we seek out patterns, don't we? So if something feels like a random event, we don't like that. We need to put it in a box somehow. So as soon as something like a date has a reputation for being cursed, then we notice every coincidence, and then that myth kind of reinforces itself a little. And I was curious on your thoughts, Alexander, about the role that our own biases play in these in how we seek patterns as humans.
Yeah, it is also, I think superstitions are connected to our biases and like something that we are aware of, something of that we are not aware of. And additionally, superstitions are coming from, I think it's coming from the lack of information about our world, about our environment, about our like product. So, for example, like in ancient times, when people saw the lightning from the sky and they can't explain why it's happening,
Mm,
they found that so they made up an explanation as it might be some gods on the sky that throw the lightning on Earth. But as we discovered more information, these superstitions were um, like, were gone. But I think the same with this famous superstition with do not deploy on Fridays. So at some point of time, yes, it might be superstition, and you even can find an evidence as why you should not deploy on Friday. In some cases, you can even get some data that helps you to explain why you shouldn't deploy on Friday. But as you get more information on why the problems are happening on Fridays, why, and you not only get this information, but you build your quality and your systems in a way that you can find those problems even before the deployment, then ideally, in ideal world, you can deploy not only on Friday, but in any hour, in any minute in the whole week, and there will
Mhm.
be no problems.
Interesting. Yeah. I'd love to get people's thoughts on why the don't deploy on a Friday is so common. I mean, it's been present in every team that I've ever worked in. It's my 10th year in testing and quality for me this year. So happy anniversary to the best decision I ever made. But I think I think for the current team that I'm working in, the don't deploy on a Friday thing is not necessarily because we feel we have a risky release process, but more the acceptance that, you know, something could go wrong at any time. We acknowledge that we are not perfect. And if something were to go wrong on a Friday, that would disrupt a day that we would ideally like to keep a little bit quieter because it's the end of a very long week. And, you know, we don't want any sort of rollback process or fixing to lead into the weekend. So for us, it feels like a fairly sensible and not superstitious reason to not deploy on a Friday. But I would love to hear other people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, just mention in chat and we will put you on stage if you
Yes.
want. And I see in chat that there are a lot of different stories on what can be considered as bad luck. For example, AD mentioned that some people think that red in the IDE is bad luck, um,
Whoa,
especially developers.
nice. I would never have attributed a single color to bad luck. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, but I think that this superstition on having something red can lead to a point that all of the failed tests will be inevitably turned off,
Mm,
or like to not point as red, or it will be rewritten to just be assert true true, so it will be always green. The other question, it will be why giving those tests, but at least developers will be happy and will not be nervous.
nice. And I think we've got some additional prompting questions as well. Can I move that? Let's see if that moves
Yeah.
people. Yes, excellent. Yeah, so we put together some additional questions for you to think about. So, can you give us an example of what your team's equivalent of don't walk under the ladder might be? What processes do we follow today that feel more like superstition than evidence, right? So, what you were saying, Oleksandr, about when we don't have enough information, we fill in the gaps with what we think is sensible. But maybe we've built processes around a single traumatic outage, for example. And what could those what could those processes actually be useful, right? What could we turn into actual heuristics? And what could we do to, say, gently challenge some of these with data rather than superstition?
I think that's first of all, it's very interesting questions, and they are even thought provoking a little bit, because I saw a lot of examples when people even don't realize that they have those superstitions, and the first step into fighting superstitions is just to realize that you have it. I think the same goes with biases. So until you consciously understand that there is some problem in your thinking process, in your thinking model, you will not be able to fight it or to transform it into something better. So for those who are joining us in chat, you can join the stage queue, and yeah, you can join us on stage. Just do not forget about it. And except of the chat, there are also opportunity to talk.
So much going on in the chat. Oh my goodness.
Yes, there are a lot of different mentions. So I really interesting in what Richard mentioned, that he said that if your favorite tool vendor released a feature on a Friday at 3 p.m. when you are rushing to finish your work, will you care to dive into it? Would you remember after the weekend?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting question, because I think that to first of all, as anything in the industry, it depends. Ideally, it should not involve, or it should not impact any of the processes, uh, because new stuff should be checked like in the separate parallel track with the main release. That's the thing. Oh, we have a new person in the stage queue, so we can put Adi on stage. Hi,
Yes,
Adi.
join us.
Hello, fellow humans.
Hello.
Hi.
Are we all well? Yeah, I don't really have that much to talk about superstitions, but I have had a very funny week. Don't know if that's related to Friday the 13th or not. I was lost and now I'm found.
Oh my goodness. Tell us all about it, Adi.
So I'll get to that. But first of all, I had a really brilliant chat with Simon on his call for insights, going through my goals for 2026 and my big core goal about raising the profile of thought in testing and making it more visible and sharing more information about it. So that was brilliant. So if anybody wants to talk about like a certain topic or anything like that, highly recommend you answer Simon's call for insights. It was a really fun, interesting conversation. He said this will take about 45 minutes, and like just past the hour, he's going, I think we should round up now because we're just going to keep going, aren't we? So that might be more to do with how I blather on than what we're actually talking about. But when the video comes out, you'll see for yourself. So that was really, really good. I also recorded a 404 talk for the Software Quality Engineering Certificate on accessibility and usability in quality engineering with Sarah Deary. That was really enjoyable. Not hampered by the fact that I had 2 coughing fits before both of those sessions. So I was hoping I wouldn't sound too gravelly or sniffy or stuff like that, because it's like winter in the UK and it's horrible. And I always get sniffy over winter. So I've had a good week that way. But then I got a little bit sad. The new ambassadors were announced, and I was the ambassador in 2025 and really enjoyed doing that. It was a complete honor to do it. So the ambassador list came out and I wasn't on it, and I was a little bit sad, a little bit disappointed, but I thought it's a brilliant opportunity for other people, the sharing the love around the community. I thought that's absolutely fantastic. And then apparently somewhere in the ministry tested, the penny dropped that I was 404 not found, and I should have been on the list, and I was added to the list. So now it's 200 all good. But yeah, it's been a bit of an odd week that way, because I'm going, right, so I'm not an ambassador now, so I'm not really going to stop sharing stuff or doing a lot of the stuff I was doing, because I was doing that anyway. But should I submit to Test Bash now if I'm not going to be an ambassador, I'm not volunteering? And should I do a talk or should I do a workshop, and what should it be on? So I literally spent 24 hours coming up with loads of ideas for potentially different talks and stuff. So it wasn't an unproductive 24 hours. It wasn't bad, and I'm really happy. And it's nobody's fault. And like I say, I'm not a blame person. I even put in Slack, because people were apologising to me. I even put in Slack, to err is human, to forgive is divine. So that must make me divine, because I forgive you all.
Excellent.
I've forgiven people before, but I don't think I've ever called myself divine before. So that was a first week. eccentric, mad, off me rocker. I've called myself all those things, but never divine. Oh,
Yeah.
Debbie in the chat says she thought she'd lost her mind when I wasn't on the list, and then I was.
And actually, it reminded me another superstition that I saw some engineers, testers, and developers also encounter is the bug disappears when you do a screen sharing. So have you ever faced it or not?
Oh, I've had the disappearing bug thing. You do some, you find something, you investigate it, you make sure it's replicable, and then you go, oh, can I show you something? I've got some weird behaviour. Can I just show you what's going on? And then you do exactly the same thing, and it doesn't do it, and it's like, you just trying to make a fool of me, you thing. What the hell are you doing? But I swear it was like that before. I can't even use a developer's excuse that it worked on my machine. It's like a tester. Is it the tester version? It doesn't work on my machine. I don't know. But it was. I promise it wasn't working a minute ago. It's like the opposite of a developer.
Yeah.
I promise it was working a minute ago. But yeah, I've definitely had that scenario. It was really an odd one. I remember finding something that happened, and unfortunately I wasn't screen recording, so I didn't have it recorded, and it really bugged me because I couldn't replicate it. And I worked it out. It took me about 8 months, not for thinking about it for 8 months, but it was just, it had happened when I was doing this scenario. So every time I did that scenario, I did it ever so slightly differently every time, because I didn't want to waste time just investigating something that happened once. But yeah, it took me about 8 months to work it out, and it was to do with the configuration in the administration app. It wasn't even anything to do with what I was doing on screen. It was a setting in the administration app, and if the setting was one way, it gave you a different error message. When we finally got into it and dug into the code, nobody could work out why 2 error messages were coming through for the same field, but for different things. It must have been somebody experimenting with something. But yeah, that was not superstitious at all, but very, very odd.
Yeah, I think there is also a different different name for such kind of bugs. They're called as Heisenberg bugs. So the bugs that may be reproducible only when you are like doing something or when you are there, and then when you are not on your machine or not using this feature and somebody else is using, then the bugs can't be reproduced. So that's also a very widespread situation. And we see a lot of people also on stage, and I think we can put Gary and Demi. Yeah. Hi, Gary. Hi, Demi.
How you doing?
Good, good. And you?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. I just
so,
go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on the superstition thing, sort of Heidi sort of picked up on one of the things I mentioned. I was thinking about it, and a lot of superstitions can happen if it happened once. If something happened once, it then becomes something that you're always like wary of. And one of the kind of stories I had with that is like a few years ago, we did a release on a Friday, and basically by the time we got back into work on the Monday, it had been like rolled back and tails between the legs, and it was like, well, what the hell happened there? And when we looked at it, it was the release that we tested wasn't the release that went out. There was features in it that no one was aware was going out. There was bug fixes that we said were in it and they weren't, and there was all sorts of like things like that. So it was like, right, we can't have this happen again, so we have a quality gate. So that was like sort of cool, about 4 years ago, and we still have that quality gate today. And we go through those checks. A lot of the processes and everything have been fixed, and obviously, new sort of release control and version control and everything is a hell of a lot better, because we were kind of a startup, and that those years ago. And yeah, And so some of the things we're doing, we've never had that, issues like that for years, but we keep going down the check every single time, just in case. Just in case someone has forgot something, missed something, just to make sure. It's that kind of, UI thing of like, are you sure? Yes, no. And following up with an, are you really sure? What kind of happens? Yeah. So that's one of the scenarios that kind of like, but yeah, I think it's a lot of the superstitions can come up because it happened once. And you don't get rid of it, the processes that you've put in place, just in case it happens again. So yeah.
And those bugs that happen once and then after that very hard to reproduce are nastiest because you are always think about it. You even if you are not thinking like in this particular time, but you are going to sleep and you're thinking about these problems, especially if when the problems they were critical ones, not just like a glitch or something, but the critical ones. And then it can be really it can make a person really anxious. So yeah, beware of these bugs.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good. And Demi, what about you? What about your superstitions and quality?
Oh, well, yeah, I wanted to share one of my demo nightmare stories because, as you know, once you give a demo, it always goes wrong. Like you just know it's going to happen. You always fear it. And I regularly have that for some reason the developers on my team had decided to just before the demo deploy something new or restart the server, and then it doesn't work in the demo, and I'm like, why do you guys keep doing this to me? I also once had that we were showing a specific ticket, and there were two different ways of doing this specific task. So I was like first showing the first way, and it wasn't working, and then I showed the second way, and it was, and I kept just telling like the people I was giving a demo to, like, I promised it worked, okay, I tested this, I promise. So yeah, we do have set up some ground rules with everyone now that they don't deploy any new things or empty the databases or restart the servers the day of the demo unless we specifically ask them to. Because yes, they are very good at doing those things right at the time you want to show it to your business. So yeah, I do have that superstition in demos. Something will always go wrong, and you can quote me on that. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that can happen to anybody, and the way how you react on these kind of problems show the resilience, because and it is training you. For example, as I think we can even draw a parallel to a public speaking. So if you can handle the situation when something is not wrong, something is not working on a demo with the clients, and you can be like you will not be nervous, you can handle it, and you can just proceed or find a way how to fix it straight away, or just mention that yeah, it can happen. Then on the public speaking side, you will have the same situation, and you know how to handle it. So for example, if the equipment is not working during public speaking, then you can also be concentrated and you can find a way how to handle it. So that's these demo sessions, like failed, or I can't say that it is failed demo sessions because it's demo, and yeah, it's demo on the live product, but those sessions can prepare you for something more.
Well, I can tell you, I had actually all those issues when I did a talk on MoTACon last year, and like the mic wasn't working, and the projector didn't want to show my presentation, and everything was going wrong, and I was just standing there for my first ever conference speak, like, it's okay, guys, I can handle it. It's okay. So yes, I do know how that feels in all those scenarios.
But that feels so much worse, right? Like if we think about the biases that we have, and when a demo goes wrong because we're in front of other people. So we have this thing called spotlight bias, where we think people are watching us or paying attention to us a lot more than they really are, because everybody else is only worried about their own appearance as well. So, you know, the demo curse probably feels a lot worse because we're worried about how we appear to the outside world. But that's very interesting.
I do have there's a kind of demo story many years ago when I was a developer. Is we had it was a piece of software that managed agricultural shows, you know, pretty unique. and it was a very small company. I'll just say they're not about anymore, but they were a little dodgy. So when I joined the company, they'd sold this software and put it in to some showground that will remain nameless, and it clearly wasn't finished. And my job when I came into the company was to finish it, which was nice. It was good to know. Anyway, so I did a lot of code and got a lot of things working. And one of the things we wanted to put in was this reporting. So many years ago, I don't know if there's anyone, shall we say, with my time of experience, shall we say, where there was a reporting package called Crystal Reports, and then basically what I developed in the test suite, but in the program, was getting all these reports, designed all these reports that the user could fire off from the menu, and then basically they get all their reports. But the database connection to these reports, I designed these reports on pointing to a test server, and then once it was pointing to this test server, then the code would then change the connection to whatever database I told it to point to. Now the problem is that in order to change the database connection, there was a little bug in the Crystal reports that I didn't know, which was if you're not connected to a server. So in other words, when you installed this and it's not connected to my test server, then it couldn't change what database it was pointing to. So we've dialed into this customer site to demo these reports, to show them all these reports, and every single report came up with an error as as we're showing them this. And so there was kind of like, so we was actually on site, so we was demoing them in front of them. And of course we didn't have a great reputation when we were in there, and I'm thinking, oh this is going to just make things worse. So we're sitting in one of their little server room, like looking at each other thinking, what can we do? And then we just got someone back in the office to dial in and change one of the reports to force it to point to one of their servers, and did, and then it worked. So we had to go through every single report and change the database connection to every single report manually to get it working. And we eventually got around it, and we just said, there was just some small technical issue with your server connection, and we resolved it. And it was, I wasn't at that company long, put it that way. I was out of there pretty sharpish, but yeah, I think that was probably the toughest experience I had, being in front of because we were a very small company, and you know, you were every role. You were the developer, you were the tester, you were the person that went on site, and yeah, it was a really, really stressful role. And I credit to anyone, if there's anyone here that does all of that, because it's a tough gig. But yeah, that's the toughest one I can remember. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Gary. Yeah, that sounds horrific, but yeah. I've noticed that Ujwal has been patiently waiting. Do you want to share your thoughts, Ujwal?
We can't hear you yet. Just turn your audio on.
Yes, make sure to come off.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, there we go.
Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So I have my own story from my first project where I was working as a solo tester. So it was like back in 2021, and it was mobile application, and it was like two kinds of mobile application. One was for customer and second one was for merchant. and it had Stripe payment gateway. So like we tested everything and it was working fine till Friday. And since it was my first project, so I don't had that decision ownership. So I was asked that whether everything is working fine. So I said yes, and the build was deployed. And I didn't perform any smoke testing because Stripe payment gateway was involved. So I thought that real money will be deducted. So I skipped that. And somehow on Saturday, client started testing the application and they were unable to see the data on both applications. So like they tried whole day. Then on Saturday night, they reported the issue. Then I tested. I was not sure that what was the issue. Then on Sunday, we checked and then we realized that different builds were deployed on both applications. So obviously, it was like fault on my side also that I didn't perform the smoke testing, but fault was on developer side also. So after that, no matter what happens, I never ever just give sign off for Friday evening. And yeah, that was like a really stressful weekend, but a nice learning in the early career for me. So I don't believe in Friday challenge, but maybe such kinds of issue where compliance or real money are involved, I usually avoid deployments.
The subject of real money, that makes me nervous every time.
Yeah, actually,
Yes.
because client was in panic mode because money was being deducted from customer side, but on merchant different build was staging build was deployed, so it was not reflecting in merchant
Oh
side.
my
So they
goodness.
were like in panic mode.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it can be really, really hard to predict. I think in most modern applications, we are dealing with like dozens of subsystems that are working together. Some of them are under our, let's call it, responsibility, and some are third party, and we can't control everything. So it should be like understandable, or you as testers and we as a tester should explain to customers that it is okay that something may not work, especially on the live environment, because it's live.
But yeah, after that we changed many things, like we changed the deployment process also. We made it mandatory for developers to like attach the screenshots of their unit testing as well as deployment builds before giving sign off. So I think though whatever happens, that happens for good reasons now. So that but bring many changes in the deployment process and development process of that company.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful story. And it reminded me that I think there are category of problems, category of bugs that are good to find because they can change the whole, or they can be a like a first step to change the process, deployment process, delivery process, anything. And without finding those bugs, there will be no thought on changing this process. So bugs can help us improve. And I think test engineers and quality engineers are helping to improve the teams. It's like helping to improve how like how I can say like doctors, but yeah, doctors could do analysis, improve us to be better or to have cures. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's that's a good set of stories.
But there
We
was
don't.
funny part
Yeah, yeah.
also because I was like intern in that project, so I thought that my job is like now gone and I will be fired on Monday morning. And then on Monday morning when I went, I was just asked for RCA, and I really thought that when I will give RCA I will be fired.
Oh.
So I was So I was like really scared, and I just give the RCA in brief detail. And I was just like, I didn't did lunch on that day, but then by evening everything was normal. So like I realized that this is the new normal in IT industry.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I think that a lot of us had this thought that we might be fired at some point of time on like missing some bugs or something. I think we can slightly wrap things for this episode because it's not very much time left. So
Oh, it's gone so fast.
yes. So what about you, Claire? So how are you fighting those superstitions?
So for me, it's all about learning more about psychology, which is something that I've really lead into in the last few years or so, because yeah, I do strongly believe that these superstitions come about as a result of our bias to assume the worst, right? So I think some of it probably ties to an evolutionary bias where if we heard a rustle in the bush behind us, it's probably safer to assume that there's a predator there rather than not, because if I assume I'm safe, it's possible that I might die. So, now finding a bug or not, or having a bad demo, or letting a bug slip into production, it's not a life or death situation anymore. But our bias for assuming the worst is still there. And I suppose I used to joke sometimes with my family that I've made a career out of assuming the worst. I'm a professional worrier, and that comes through in my personal life sometimes, but I think I think we would all do well to learn a little bit more about biases so that we can be aware of them, because we can never conquer them. We just need to be aware that they exist, they influence our thinking, and we can help each other if we learn more about that.
Yes, you're totally correct. And I think also superstitions can help teams to construct their rituals and to be a real team.
Absolutely.
Even if those superstitions are totally like fun, or yeah, it is totally understandable that it is a superstition, not something real, but rituals and those little actions can make team as a team, and it can improve the life of the team, I think. And
100%. Yeah. The chat has moved on to carrots now, so I feel like we may have people. I don't know what's happened there.
yeah, it's like a lot of different conversations in the chat. So if you have a possibility, you can join the next This Week in Quality and talk with all of us there. And for those who are listening us right now, we are heading to the end of this episode. I want to say thank you to our guests, Gary, Demi, Adi, Ushwal. Thanks a lot. I want to thank all of other people who are in chat and sharing their insights. And a really big thank to you, Claire, for co-hosting with me.
Thank you so much, Oleksandr. And thank you for steering me through the first ever podcast. How exciting. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, it was like the best debut of the co-host.
Absolutely.
And for everybody, thank you for listening, and see you at the next episode in a week. This is This Week in Quality.